Hello students, you're welcome to today's lesson on songs, chants, and oral tradition as one of the structural and stylistic techniques in African drama. In other words, songs, chants, and oral tradition in African drama. In order to exemplify this, we will be using two major plays, which are Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo and The Lion and the Jewel by Wole Soyinka, so that you can have a better understanding of songs, chants, and oral tradition and excel excellently in whatever literature examination that you might be preparing for. So, are you ready to learn with me today? Get your writing materials and stay tuned. I am Rameso Adeyemo from English with RMG, and this video is proudly brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning Platform. Now, what are songs, chants, and oral tradition, and why is it even important in African drama or African literature in all? First, you need to understand that both songs and chants are forms of African oral literature. That is, there is a whole form of literature that is called oral literature in Africa, and that is because oral literature was the only form of literature that we had originally in Africa. We had our own literature, but it was not written. It is usually passed from one generation to another generation orally. So we have these songs, different kinds of chants for different kinds of ceremonies. Do you understand? We have this oral tradition, which is what's native to us. Are you following? So, oral literature is the creative expressions such as myth, proverbs, songs, praise poetry, etc., composed in traditional or primitive societies and based and passed from one generation to another by words of mouth in pre-literate societies. So this is one of the definitions of what oral literature. You need to understand that it is a very creative process. It is a very creative expression, and it could be in form of myths, proverbs, songs, praise poetry. But today we are focusing on what chant songs and what general oral tradition in African drama. So you need to understand that this is one of the most important aspects of our tradition, of our culture. And if we are going to be examining African literature, which is supposed to represent what Africa, the reality of African culture and experience, then it has to be one of it. Are you following? So depending on where you are from, if you're an African, you would understand what I'm saying better. In your family, you must have some kind of praise poetry that maybe your mom or your dad can use to do what to praise you when you do something that impresses them. Are you following? So, in fact, there is a kind of name that you would be given that is usually special for your what? For your praise poetry. And when your mom wants to maybe get your keyboard, or they are trying to get you to do something, they use that name to call you. So this is what part of what African tradition. So Africans often use this oral literature to tell stories and pass down values from generations to generations. So, for example, there are praise poetry for the families that are warriors. So, in Yoruba, for example, they call them jagun. There are praise poetries for the families that are hunters. Are you following? So, if somebody comes from the family of the warriors and you are trying to be a coward, they are going to tell you that no, you can't be a coward in this kind of family. Do you understand? This is one of the ways they pass down values. And they are going to sing this praise poetry. Maybe one of the praise poetry has something about being brave in it. Are you following? So they are going to sing this praise poetry for the person, maybe for their son and all of that, to make him know that, look, you can't be a coward in this family. In this family, we are warriors. So sometimes they use the African oral tradition to do what? To pass down values. So in Yoruba culture, for example, every village and family cycle has their distinct panegyric, which we usually call oriki. In primitive Africa, these chants are mainly passed down orally. Nobody wrote it down. So it is not written down like this in primitive era. Now, a lot of people are trying to write it down, but then nobody was writing it down. So we have our own oriki. For example, I am Yoruba. I have my own oriki. My family, that is the entire family, also has its own what? Oriki. In fact, there's something called Agbole, like extended family, also has its own what? Oriki. So now let's go for the types of chants and songs in Africa. So first, you need to pay attention to this because it is usually asked in your multiple choice question. So first, we can have elegy. You need to understand that there are different types. So elegy is sad and mournful and thoughtful poem, usually expressing grief over loss. It is often recited at a funeral or when some African dignitaries dies before the funeral commence. So you could be asked in your multiple choice, for example, that what is the name for a sad and mournful poem that is usually what recited to express grief over the loss of someone or over the loss of someone or of something rather. So know that it is what elegy. And this is just to tell you that this African oral tradition has different types. Just like we have the word that they will use in a positive celebration. Do you understand? Like someone who has achieved a great feat, like a warrior who has just conquered a particular battle. The kind of oral chant that would be used for that kind of person is different from the kind of oral chant that would be used for when someone is grieving or when someone has just died. Are you following? So even though this oral tradition was not written down, they know that there are different types as they pass it down from one generation to another generation. But why I'm saying this here is for you to understand these different types and what take note of their names so that when it comes up in your multiple choice examination, you will be able to choose the correct answer. So another form of an oral chant is the dirge. So the dirge is also a sad song or poem sung at a funeral to mourn someone who died. So it is a mournful poem as well. But you need to understand that there's a difference. A sad song or poem sung at a funeral to mourn someone who died. The person might not even be young, the person might be old. Do you understand? But they are still going to do what? To mourn the person. Maybe the person is a king or the person is an elderly person. Are you following? So we also have panegyric. So it's a formal speech or writing that gives high elaborate praise to a person or thing. So this one is quite common. If you're an African, you should know that you have your own panegyric. Maybe it's a family one or a personal one. Maybe when your mom is trying to get you to do something, sometimes they might even recite this panegyric. When they are trying to encourage you to do something, maybe you are at the verge of giving up, if there's something about being courageous in that panegyric, they might recite it to you to let you know that you are from a what? A courageous lineage, and you cannot just afford to be a coward or to give up on whatever it is that you are doing now. So this panegyric is actually very, very common than every other type of oral chants in Africa. If you are not familiar with others, if you're an African, you should be familiar with this particular one because, for example, we have names in Yoruba land like Arike, Ashake, Aduke. So these names, they have their own words, panegyric. So now let's look at the functions of chants and songs in African tradition. What are the functions? Why do authors employ these chants and tradition? So in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo, for example, it is a powerful African drama that explores themes of power, betrayal, gender, and resistance in a traditional African setting. Another thing you need to understand is that Let Me Die Alone is a tragedy. It is not a comedy. So the kind of chants and songs that you should be expecting, it should not be something um, celebratory like that. So chants and songs are often used to convey emotions or reinforce cultural themes in African drama. That is, depending on what each African drama is about. If it is about celebration, now maybe they are doing wedding, you should be expecting what? Celebratory songs. But if something negative is happening, maybe somebody died, somebody betrayed someone, do you understand? All of those things are happening that are negative. Then you should be expecting what? A an African song like Dirge or Elegy, which is going to do what? Which is going to express some sadness. So chants and songs, because it is part of us, it is our tradition. Do you understand? This oral tradition, it is ours. So it is usually also do what? Integrated into African drama to portray who we really are, our reality. Because African drama is supposed to do what? Portray our reality, not something that is just going to put Africa out there anyhow. It has to be genuine. Do you understand? It has to really reflect who we really are. So that is why authors usually do what? Integrate it into their drama in order for it to do what? Reinforce the cultural themes and also express emotions. So, in Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo, for example, the Sunday chants, songs, and drum helps reinforce the play as an African play set in what? In Sierra Leone. So, in fact, the play opens with what? The Sunday chants and drums sounding in the background. So, it is just to reinforce that in Africa, we have our what? Our oral tradition. We have our songs, we have our drums. Are you following? We have our chants that we use in what? In different cultural context or in different context. So it is just to reinforce who we are sometimes. And sometimes it is used to do what? To complement the emotions that is being depicted in the play. So the play opens with chants and songs from the Sunday Society. These chants immediately immerse the audience in Mende culture and African culture as a whole. So let's say you are watching the stage play, for example. Immediately you hear the drums, you can tell that, oh, this is an African setting. That is if you can identify what the African drums. So in page 54, for example, we have lights. The Barre Sunday music is playing off stage. Madame Yoko is seated with court attendants. Sunday girls troop in and do a short dance. So usually as an African play, there must be an aspect where there is a short dance, do you understand? Or a short display of this oral tradition. Are you following? In fact, if you watch TV or content about Africa where they are talking about celebrating Africa and all of that, there will usually be a part where they are going to show people dressed in different colorful attires, different colorful African attires, and where they dance using all of these traditional songs. So we also have the all exit. A dirge rises off stage as Yoko sits. A lead fall and she soon starts sobbing silently. So this is where something terrible happened in the play. When Jennifer died and a lot of people were turning against Madame Yoko, saying that she's the one that killed her. So the dirge that was played in between that scene, what is it used for? It is used to do what? To reinforce the emotion, to reinforce the negative thing that just happened, to reinforce the death. Do you understand? To reinforce the betrayal that has just been done against Madame Yoko and the innocent young girl, Jennifer. Are you following? So this is just to show you that these African song and chants in African literature are used to do what? To reinforce emotions, to reinforce the themes. Do you understand? To reinforce the whatever it is that is happening in that moment. If it is celebratory, like doing having a ceremony, maybe it is an inauguration, we have something positive. And if it is negative, the author, it is an intentional effort. Intentionally do what? Integrate the suitable songs or chants. Do you understand? So now let's look at uses of songs and chants in The Lion and the Jewel. So The Lion and the Jewel is a comedy, while Let Me Die Alone is a what? Tragedy. So The Lion and the Jewel in general is a humorous play that explores the clash between tradition and modernity in post-colonial Nigeria. Shoyinka critiques both blind adherence to tradition and mindless embrace of what? Of Western culture. So you also need to understand that whether it is a satire, whether it is a comedy, whether it is a tragedy, there is a suitable song or there is a suitable chant in African culture to do what? To reinforce it or that is suitable to integrate whatever it is that the author is trying to what? To portray. And this is who we are in traditional Africa. We have the right song, we have the right chants. In fact, some of these chants are used to correct people if someone is trying to do bad, something negative in the society, they might not even talk to that person directly. They might just stay close to that person and chant some songs. And once the person listens to it, the person knows that he is the person being, being directed to with this particular chant. So, Soyinka uses songs and chants to reinforce cultural heritage in the play, which helps reinforce the play as an African drama, and a play portrays African experience in post colonial Africa. That is a play that portrays African experience in post-colonial Africa. So you need to understand that it is an intentional effort by African authors to do what to integrate this part of our experience into our plays. So dance and music segments highlight village unity and cultural pride. So you can see, despite the conflict between Sidi and Lakunle, there's a point whereby they did what they had their dance segment and everybody participated. So if we are going to analyze that deeper, we could say that Shoyinka used this part to show that despite the conflict, the minor conflict, there is still kind of what unity and the cultural pride amongst the villagers in Ilujile village and by extension in Africa. And if we look at who we have for real, despite our differences, despite whatever, when it is time for some festival period, everybody dance and celebrate together with these songs, with these chants, with these different types of words, African oral tradition. So this is to show you that regardless of our differences, regardless of conflict, sometimes this oral tradition helps to do what? To bring us together in Africa. Are you following? So, for example, in the play we have CD challenging Kulin to dance. So who will dance the devil horse? Who will dance the snake? That is, they are trying to do what? Create characters. A terrific shout and a clap of drums. Lakule enters into the spirit of the dance with enthusiasm. He takes over from CD. So we can see this on pages 13 to what? To 14. So you could be asked in your examination that what is the purpose of African oral tradition in African drama? Or what is the essence of the dance in Wale Soyinka's The Lion and the Jewel? So you should be able to say that first, it's a symbol of what? Cultural unity, cultural identity. Are you following? And this is also used towards the end of the play to reinforce what? To reinforce emotion, to reinforce the celebration that was done in the play. So these are the major points you should later know how to develop it. In another scene, we have Sidi breaking into dance with Baraka. So she breaks into a kind of shoulder dance and sings Yokolu, kò wá tán bí, ìyàwó gbọ́kàn ṣọ́lẹ̀, ọkọ yọké. So this is on what? Page 44. So this song is quite popular in traditional African society, Yoruba to be precise, to do what? To kind of mock someone that has failed at something. Do you understand? So it is a mockery song to mock someone that has failed at something that, oh, can you see the end of it eventually? Do you understand? So that is the context in which this kind of songs are what assigned. So this is when Sidi thought that Baraka was actually impotent. So she was trying to do what? To mock him when they were having the conversation, not knowing that she is the one being what? Deceived. Are you following? So the songs are used to do what? To reinforce whatever it is that is happening in the play. Also, when Sidi was eventually getting married to Baraka, we have the song Moteni 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 So mommy where mommy So mommy fa mommy Yarabi lo me to le domo. So this is a celebratory song to celebrate what Sidi is getting married. So you can see that from different scenes, we have different songs to reinforce whatever it is that is happening there. When Sidi was trying to mock Baraka, there is a suitable song to mock. Now that Sidi is celebrating a wedding, there is a what? A suitable song. And this song are usually common, even though it is not written down. Everybody knows it in the society, such that once somebody starts it, every other person can what? Can sing along. So it is usually passed down orally, and it is something that everybody knows. In fact, now that it is written down, the culture is quite eroding. A lot of young persons don't even know any of these songs now that it is written down. But then that is not written down, because there is a kind of unity. When there is a function, everybody attends. So by the time you start attending, you just know the song automatically, even as a young person in the society. So it is just to do what? To reinforce our cultural identity as Africans that, okay, we have the way we celebrate and we have songs with which what we mourn if there is a loss of somebody or a loss of anything in the society. So it is an intentional effort by authors to do what? To integrate this part of our culture into our own African drama as well. So songs Chants and other oral tradition are what are very important aspect of what African drama, because it is the basis for us, it is the beginning for us. It is now, it is after the pre-literate era that we now have what the written form of what of literature. Do you have any question? I hope you have a well-rounded understanding of the concept. If you are yet to subscribe, kindly subscribe to this channel. See you in the next video. Bye.